Indie games are the most interesting art that is happening in the world right now. I'm more excited about the kinds of ideas and experiences being expressed in indie games than I am about any of the fine arts. But as a commercial space, it's very much in change right now. We see that we're having like streaming services pop up and stuff that's really going to change the business equation over the next few years. And I don't know how that's going to turn out. I mean, games are always going to be here, but what it looks like to make money in games might be very different in a few years.
Good question. I mean, we hear talks about indie apocalypse. Indie games are doing great. I mean, if you run around PAX and you see what's here, it's impressive. There's so many great games being made every day, most of them indies, and it's really fun to see how creative people can just go out there and have some space. Though, when you hear about Stadia and stuff like that, it's a little scary, I have to say. They make a lot of space for AAAs, and I'm not too sure, you know, when you look at streaming, it can be good for multiplayer games, but when you look at single player games, it's hardcore, you know, we don't make any money with that. It's a weird state right now. I'm really eager to see what the streaming is going to do for indie games.
I think the current state of indie games is pretty okay. I think way more people are making indie games and way more people are playing them, but that obviously also means more people are competing about the same thing, but more people are making more games. That's great.
I think indie games are getting more and more polished, right? You start to see more and more small teams, maybe 5 to 12 person teams that are extremely good. Some people say that the term indie is kind of going out of style, you know, just because the quality is merging between, you know, these indie games versus these larger, more AAA games. But hopefully I think indie games will be kind of a bastion for creativity, right? Like when you say, I'm going to play an indie game, you know it's a weird and unique title as opposed to something that, you know, a 100-man studio would make because it's a very safe choice to do so.
I think like the current state of indie games is that it's a very fresh medium, and it has been democratized by like Unity especially, which is very available for people, and a lot of people now can make games. They don't have to learn a lot of heavy programming to make games anymore. I think that's really good for the medium, and I think that it's going to evolve a lot. And now I think we see a lot of like retro stuff, like from rehashes of what people grew up on, and I think that's going to change a little bit. And we're not going to see all this retro stuff, but we're going to see more innovative stuff. I think at the moment the indie scene is like both very innovative and also very conservative. So I would like to see more innovation in that space, and I think we're going to have a lot more of it.
We've been lucky enough to start off kind of before the big bubble happened, so we got on before Steam Greenlight and stuff like that. I know currently it's very, very hard in terms of getting visibility, even for us, like just getting people to see the games is very difficult. So hopefully the next 5 years, I mean, things with like the Epic Store, getting more kind of storefronts out there, more competition going, and getting kind of some competition going to help out developers, I think will be a really good thing.
I think the indie game category is, you know, one of the most interesting categories. You're just seeing, I think even yesterday, Hyper Light Drifter was optioned or started production on an animated show. You've got, I think where I see it going, or where I hope it goes, is a lot more embracing probably licensing IP, whether it's abandoned movie IP or TV IP. But I think it's just that influx of you know, new ideas, some commercially really viable, some of them, you know, quite out there. But it's that real good mixture of new and fresh ideas that, you know, kind of make the indie scene quite interesting. I think willing to take risks, and a lot of those risks, some of those really pay off. You know, like Bubba Is You. Again, that kind of classic indie game has really taken off, and I want to see, you know, it's great to see those type of games that aren't super polished and super hyped. They just come out of nowhere, release, and do really well.
Right now, the beginning of 2019, indie games are coming off a new renaissance that we just had. This started with Super Meat Boy, Braid. It was a big thing, and indie games just kept blossoming. A lot of money went back into it because we realized AAA games, while great, while high quality, weren't satisfying that weird niche you have in your heart for exploration that indie games just do. They're not afraid. They're unabashedly passionate about games and about the potential of games. Right now, indie games has cemented itself as a solid genre, and it will continue to be more and more solid, although what indie games means can be literally anything, which is part of the beauty of indie games. But it has respect, it has money, and it'll continue going forward.
There's a lot of like saturation for the indie games. Like it's very hard to get noticed these days. But yeah, I think it's nice that there are more stores coming, like Epic Store or the Cartridge Store. So there's a lot more options, and I think it's pretty good for developers actually. But yeah, the hardest part is getting noticed, and you have to go to other places like streamers and YouTubers and that to get the word out. I think we're doing an okay job to get actually noticed. We do a lot of Twitter and Discord and stuff like that, but yeah, not as easy.
There's good and bad for us in the indie game community. I mean, I think in general, it's incredible that the quality of games continues to raise, and there's like a lot of ways for devs to get out there and get their games out there. However, because it's so crowded with awesome games, that means we need to even stand out more and try to find ways to be really unique. I think in general, like looking at these subscription services, like what Apple just launched, what Game Pass does, I think that, at least for a team of our size, is sort of the future and very helpful because we find audiences that otherwise we wouldn't, right? Like, I think in the case of Oxenfree, nobody knew who we were, and then we sort of built an audience. But ultimately, like we have a hard time finding people who wouldn't naturally want to try a game like ours. And so these subscription services help lift us up a lot. So I think that's really interesting also because we don't have to cram like free-to-play mechanics in to try and monetize. Like we can just find other ways other than just selling a single game to make money. So I think it's exciting. At the same time, in 5 years, I have no idea. Like the last 3 years was such a massive shift. It's hard to keep up and tell where things are going to go. But I think, yeah, subscriptions we're not going to get away from. I am also excited just about like where Epic has taken things because I think shaking up even the monetization for developers is really good for the whole industry.